Georgia has lost a ton of talent to the NFL. So can they reload fast enough to dominate the SEC again? Or is Feinbaum right? No one fears the Dogs anymore. Welcome to the Nitro College Football Show. I'm Burl.
And I'm Straight.
And tonight we are talking Dogs and what to expect this season. So where do we go from here, Street?
Well, Georgia won the SEC last year, in case you forgot, which seems like a lot of people have. Arguably one of Kirby's best coaching jobs to get them to win the SEC. But this year's team's a lot younger. Kirby spoke about it over the summer. Over 50% of the team is first and second year players. So the question is, how does a team that won the SEC last year, but probably in a down year, get better and improve in 2025?
Well, we know the big gaps that they had last year was poor offensive line play, horrendous receiving room, led the nation in drops. That's like probably the most famous stat from last year, and end up, costing Carson Beck a really good season, potential first round draft pick. And he didn't help himself either. But when you have those two things that you depend on as a quarterback, kind of makes it hard to be, the best that's out there.
Yeah. So I guess, we start right there at the top, right? Most important position in football is the quarterback, right? And so that's always it's always going to come down to the quarterback. We got Carson Beck out the door. He was going to the pros, but then he took a detour to Miami. Georgia kind of let him go. So in steps Gunnar Stockton, the hero of the second half of the SEC championship game, had, forced to start there in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. Didn't play bad. Didn't play great, but didn't play bad, certainly. But now it's his team. And he's not being talked about in the same regard as a lot of the other top quarterbacks in the SEC. But let's not forget this guy was fringe 4-star player out of high school who rewrote the Georgia history books. He broke all those records that belonged to a couple of guys by the name of Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. He was no slouch. And so him coming in to take over this offense, maybe it looks a little bit different. Maybe he's not asked to carry the team the way that Carson was last year. Because if Georgia can run the football, that's going to make Gunnar Stockton's job a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. And on top of that, has a completely new receiver room. And we'll dive into all the pieces there, but the talent on the offensive side of the ball this year is exponentially better than it was last year. And it's kind of nuts because you lost 3 offensive linemen to the NFL, and they were really good offensive linemen. Blocking was kind of an issue last year. So that was kind of a puzzle there. I'm trying to understand why. But when you look at the running backs that we had, Etienne was hurt a lot, and Frazier's a freshman. And when he was in, he had some flashes of great moments, but he also had some moments where he reminded everybody that he's was a freshman. And couple that with the wide receiver play. I mean, you can't break long runs if your receivers aren't blocking downfield. And we saw a ton of situations where wide receivers just didn't make the blocks. The key one was against Notre Dame. And we missed the block on the safety, and it caused a fumble, Trevor Etienne fumble, which happened to be his only fumble of his college career.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the problems for Georgia last year stemmed from offensive line play and lack of running games.
But one person who's not sleeping on Gunnar Stockton, and this ought to make you feel really good, Georgia fans, and that's Nick Saban.
That should make you feel good because that man knew talent.
Absolutely. I mean, if the future commissioner of college football knows anything, so that should be reassuring to people. And he's coming into a situation where he's got a full off season of being the guy, number one, getting all the number one reps. You did have to battle it out a little bit with Puglisi, but I don't think that was ever really in doubt. And he's got a little bit different skill set than what we saw with Carson Beck.
Yeah, he's
People
gonna
are
run the ball a
he's
little bit
gonna
more.
he's gonna run the ball, which is great because Georgia, especially college, if your quarterback can run at all, even just a little bit, your offense is going to be so much better,
Yeah. We
assuming
know
that they can actually throw it well.
yeah, well, we know he's also when he does run the ball, he's not afraid to take a hit, as evidenced by the
Yeah,
SEC championship game.
that's a
Y
double-edged sword there.
right. You hope that maybe as the starter, he learns to, slide a little bit more, maybe not take so many of those shots because if he does, he'll be out pretty quick, but yeah, he definitely has an arm. It's not like this is some noodle-armed quarterback who's gonna come in and dink the ball down the field. He threw the ball deep in the Sugar Bowl, hit a couple deep passes, had, a gorgeous pass dropped, of course. Um, he can throw the ball. So, I don't think people that think that it's just gonna be Gunnar Stockton running quarterback draws all day and handing the ball off, I think you're gonna be surprised, but I don't think Georgia's gonna throw the ball like they did last year. The
No,
offense was built around Carson Beck last year. I don't think that's
yeah.
gonna be the case this year.
Last year's offense was very similar to the Jacob Eason year, and funny enough, well, yeah, got beat by Ole Miss both those seasons. But
The difference that year is they had Nick Chubb coming off an injury and Sony Michel. You didn't
yeah,
have that in the backfield last year at all.
no, not at all. But that whole offense just ran through Eason that year, and that was Carson Beck last year. And one thing I'll say about Gunner, you know, he has one of the best deep balls that I've ever seen. We saw it in the Sugar Bowl. We saw it at G Day a couple times, and he just lays it in there. So I would not be shocked to see the Dogs taking more deep shots in this offense this year.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got the difference in the receiving room obviously will dictate that. But I think in terms of what they do down the field, I think it's gonna first we're gonna have to look at the running game, right? Georgia was dismal in the rushing game last year, compared to what they've been, but even in the SEC, right? They were in the hundreds overall in the country in rushing. I think a lot of it had to do with the running back room last year, right? We had ETN came in as a transfer. We had Branson Robinson, Roger Robinson. Roger Robinson basically missed the whole year. Branson Robinson coming off the injury, he didn't look quite the same, and then he got hurt. Nate Frazier was a true freshman forced into a starting role, like you said before, showed flashes of brilliance, but had some problems with fumbles, also had problems with making guys miss in the backfield. I think
And
I saw a
and
stat where he was,
also some blocking in the passing game.
yeah. So, he's another year in, and I think he's going to be good. I think the overall room around him is much built up. You've got Cash Jones to be your pass catching back. That's his role. He's not going to run the ball very much, but he's going to catch passes for you. That's great. They brought in Josh McCray from Illinois. Big bruising back, was the MVP of their bowl game, coming to take some goal line, tough carries. Roger Robinson is looking healthy. It's been 2 years of him not being healthy, so hopefully he gets back fully healthy. You've got the two guys who were freshmen last year in Bowens and Phillips back, and freshman Bo Walker even made some news in spring. So the running back room just looks deeper. And if it's healthier than it was last year, I mean, health was a big issue last year. If it's healthier, that's going to certainly help out Gunnar Stockton in the offense.
Absolutely. I think just having that depth sets you up for so much success because now you feel a lot better about your chances deep in the season because everybody's going to have injuries, everybody's going to be hurt. So it's going to come down to who's got the freshest legs. And that might be Georgia's running back room this year. Just a rotation of these guys and in different games. Like maybe you see Nate Frazier probably the most, but there might be a Josh McCray game. There might be a Branson Robinson game. There might be a Bo Walker game. Who knows? I could definitely see them just splitting reps and maybe get back to what we saw in the good old days of Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, those type of backs where they weren't always getting like 20, 30 carries a game each, but maybe like 10 to 15 spread out between two to three
Yeah,
backs.
those running back rooms in the late teens, right, where you had Zamir White, and you had Brian Herrien, and you had, early years of James Cook, and you had Kenny McIntosh, and you had kind of a spread out group of people that you could kind of give the ball to, not just one guy. And then you had a stud at the front, and they had DeAndre Swift. And that's kind of be your Nate Frazier in this group.
Yeah,
Uh, if they can find that, then they'll turn those numbers right around real quick. They'll be back in the top 30 in the country easily.
absolutely. And that was probably the biggest shocking thing to me about the offense last year was we just couldn't run the ball consistently at all. The games that we did run the ball halfway decent, we dominated for the most part. I mean, the first Texas game, that was a dominating performance by the offense and the defense. And maybe not as much in the SEC championship, but when Georgia had some things working in the running game, the offense excelled.
Yeah. To run the ball better, the offensive line is going to have to be better. So as you were mentioning before, Georgia loses a lot up front. They lost 4 guys to the NFL, so they're replacing 4 starters. But the performance of those 4 guys last year makes you question whether maybe it was addition by subtraction, even though those guys are good players, even though some of them are going to start in the NFL. Maybe that it was just they weren't gelling as a unit. Maybe it was health. I mean, the one guy who's back from that team last year that was a starter last year is Ernest Green, but he was hurt a lot last year and he played pretty bad at times. He lost his starting job to Monroe Freeling, who also started a good bit last year. But if you remember, Monroe Freeling was absolutely horrid in the Sugar Bowl, like
Oh yeah,
so bad. Um, but he had been good throughout the year, so hopefully he's back. Micah Morris is going to get a chance at guard, Drew Bobo at center. And then the one position that's kind of really up in the air right now is at right guard. Daniel Calhoun, redshirt freshman, huge kid from Walton High School. I actually saw this kid play in high school, and he dwarfed everybody on the field, ridiculously big. But he may be getting pushed by an even bigger guy, and that's freshman Juan Gaston, who, based on the reports out of the scrimmage this last weekend, started at right guard in the scrimmage. And it'd be very rare for Georgia to have a true freshman starting on the line, but we've seen it before. Andrew Thomas started for 3 years at left tackle. So
and that
if
worked
Kirby
out
likes
pretty
you enough
well.
to give you that faith and start you on the line, you're going to be good.
Absolutely. And if you don't trust Kirby's judgment by now, what are you doing? What are you watching? I mean, we've been through it, and I could say that I'm actually really excited to see what Ernest Green does this year because he knows it didn't go that great last year. So in everything that I've seen, his interviews, people talking about him, um, he seems like a man on a mission to, I don't know, to return the Dogs to glory in the running game and be that dominant offensive line that just beats the crap out of whoever they're playing. Maybe we'll see the return of the old Kirby Death March.
Yeah, I think the offense as a whole dictates that you might see more of that this year because, as we mentioned, you're not going to be throwing the ball over the place like you have been. So maybe this year is a little bit more where you kind of get the lead and you get up 2 scores and you sit on people a little bit more.
Yeah, there's just a different feeling about the team this year to me. I feel like it's going to be a little grittier team, maybe a little more connected team that like we've seen in the past because there are a lot of leaders on this team that are really stepping up that we're hearing about.
Yeah.
So,
So the last piece of the offense that we definitely need to talk about, and lots of people are kind of talking about, is maybe this is Georgia's strength position, which last year it was obviously a weakness, is the receiving room. That includes the tight ends and the wide receivers. Tight end depth is ridiculous this year. You have Oscar Delp, who's a senior now. Certainly he's made plays. Sometimes he struggled at times, but he's quality. He'd be starting it almost everywhere in the SEC.
yep.
And so would Lawson Lucky.
Shout out, West Forsyth High School.
And so would Lawson Lucky, his backup. Lawson Lucky made some fantastic plays last year, including that catch in the SEC championship game when Gunnar was flushed out to the right and he kind of toe tapped. We've definitely got talent, but the good news is that Georgia recruits tight end better than anybody in the country, and we have two freshmen who one was a 5-star and one was a high 4-star who are ridiculously talented. Elias Williams is huge. He's so tall. He makes all these huge men in the tight end room look small, kind of like how Darnell Washington used to. And then Ethan Barber, that guy can move. He can get down the field. So the tight end room is going to be awesome, I think, for Georgia this year. And we love our tight ends. We ran our offense through a tight end for 3 years. I would love to get back to that.
Yeah, granted, he was the greatest tight end of all time.
We can't replace him, but we can replace him in the aggregate. What's that, Moneyball?
Yeah. He's already goated, and he's only in his second year of the NFL.
And he shaved his head, and he's a scary, scary man.
Yeah, he's like Lex Luthor. But yeah, I'm super excited about this wide receiver room. We said big transfers with Zachariah Branch coming over from USC. Huge threat there. Noah Thomas from Texas A&M. When I say a huge threat there, I mean like as a huge, large human being, and he's fast. And there's been a lot of good talk of him coming out of camp, and that's supplementing a wide receiver room that sees a returning Colby Young, which was a huge loss for Georgia last year, not having him.
I think it was underestimated how much losing Colby Young and Ra Thomas even before the season started last year.
Yeah.
When Georgia lost those two receivers, they didn't have anybody on the team playing receiver that was over 6'1". You lost the only two big bodies that you had coming into the year. And what those two losses did is it forced guys to play other positions. Dylan Bell became a one outside receiver. Dylan Bell is best suited to play his Swiss Army knife role, where he sometimes takes passes, sometimes kind of plays a slot guy, sometimes goes out deep. He's not your one guy out there at X. And that's what he was forced to do last year. So getting Colby Young back is huge for this team. And you've got to be excited about Zachariah Branch, who is getting all the press this summer, looked great in G-Day. This is a guy who was an All-American as a returner, as a true freshman at USC, but definitely has the receiving skills as well. And Noah Thomas looks like a beast from Texas A&M. You've also got depth at receiver, in the recruiting ranks, right? Sokovie White, who was a freshman last year, he can make plays, man. He made a couple of eye-turning plays at G-Day. You've got London Humphreys, who came over from Vanderbilt, had a couple of little flash plays.
I was about to say, don't sleep on London Humphreys. He was probably the G-Day star.
Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns at G-Day. And then we got the freshmen, right? The two big freshmen, Talon Taylor and CJ Wiley. CJ Wiley in the scrimmage the other day, I heard he had 2 50-yard receptions. He's making some noise.
That's going to be a dangerous tandem for a while.
It's been a while since Georgia, had that big recruit come in, and to get Talon Taylor, who was a 5-star, CJ Wiley, who was a high 4, those were huge. Just to have young receivers coming in and looking like they're going to help contribute to this room that's going to be much better than it was last year.
Absolutely. And people can hate on James Coley all they want, but Duke can recruit some wide receivers.
Dude always could recruit. No doubt.
Just don't have him call plays.
Yeah, please.
But yeah, great job on the recruiting trail there. Yeah, really looking forward to those freshmen. There's a lot of freshmen to look forward to this year.
Yeah, there's more than that. There's a couple other.
Yeah,
but those were the two big names.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else on the offense? Any key things that you think are important to look for?
I mean, I think the big thing for this team this year, other than running the football, is avoiding slow starts. For whatever reason, last year Georgia just was a slow starting football team. They kind of picked things up. You just don't want to get in that situation when you have a young quarterback who doesn't have a lot of experience. When you had a guy who was a senior who had already been a starter before, you know, Carson, as bad as he was at times, then he seemed to kind of make up for it a lot. You don't want to put a young quarterback in a position where he's behind a lot. Because that will hurt your ability to be able to run the football as well. That was another reason that Georgia, didn't run the football great last year. I mean, there were just some games where they just really started bad,
There weren't a lot of games where you could look back and say, "Oh, they played 4 quarters of football, of
right.
solid
Even
football."
the Clemson game where they just destroyed Clemson, it was 6-3 at halftime.
Yeah. The best games they played was against Tennessee.
And in the first half against Texas, even though
Yes,
they
for
had 3 turnovers.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah,
But yeah,
I
I
agree.
think that's a key, and find balance in the running game and just get back to Georgia football. It was fun because you had the strong on quarterback and you had Brock Bowers, you had Ladd McConkey, but let's get back to Georgia football.
Yeah. Gotta be run first. It's the identity of the program. All right. Moving on to the defense. Lots of stuff to talk about with the defense. Lots of new faces, a lot of hype coming out of camp. Where do you want to start?
I mean, I think you got to start with the fact that even though Georgia has lost so much on defense the last few years in the draft, they had 4 players on the SEC preseason first team: linebacker CJ Allen, defensive lineman Christian Miller, safety KJ Bolden, and cornerback Dalen Everett. So no matter what you think about Georgia's losses, and yes, we lost 3 first-round players to the NFL draft last year. That's crazy, right?
That's pretty insane.
But we've got 4 guys who are amongst the best in the best conference in the country, the best at their positions. So there is star power out there already. And if they can get and bring along some of these young stars, because Georgia has recruited so well on the defensive side of the ball, and the defense is set up to be very, very dangerous. It's just young.
Yeah, yeah. It is. It is. But there is some leadership that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like from everything that you've seen, this is CJ Allen's team, right?
It is.
CJ Allen was a guy when he was a freshman 2 years ago who basically pushed Jamon Dumas Johnson away from Georgia, a guy who was a all conference player because the talent was there. And sometimes you saw him get a little bit out of position, but Georgia has always relied on that middle linebacker to be the leader out there, be it Roquan, be it Nakobe Dean, that guy, that field general who runs the team. And from everything that you're
And
seeing, everything that's been talked about, that's CJ Allen.
runs the field.
Right.
Sideline to sideline, running guys down, meeting them in the backfield. I mean, you see those flashes from CJ Allen last year, and there was some good and bad. Like you said, that speed that he has was kind of a double-edged sword for him. But yeah, linebacker room looks great. I mean,
Yeah, we'll talk
Georgia's
about the
always,
linebackers in a
yeah,
minute. It might be the the most loaded position, at least in the first and second teams on the team. But
yeah. So you did mention we lost 3 players to the first round. Um, so how's Georgia looking at D line? Are we reloading?
yeah, I mean, losing Tyrion Ingram Dawkins was a surprise. I didn't think we were going to lose him. And so the line itself, it looks different because the guys you had up there were there for so long. Nazir Stackhouse was around forever. Warren Brinson was around forever. And then you had Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, who'd been around. So you lost a lot of experience up there. But Christian Miller looks the real deal. Now, he's had injuries his first couple of years, but he looks like he's the real deal. Jordan Hall always showed promise, but was hurt a lot last year too. So those are your 2 guys that are going to lead you up front. Xavier McLeod had come over last year from South Carolina. If he lives up to what his billing was out of high school, He looks great. And then you've got a couple of interesting young freshmen. Jonah Ajonye. He was here last year, but he was hurt. He missed the whole season pretty much. And then you got freshman Elijah Griffin, who's been creating all the buzz since he arrived on campus back in spring.
Yeah, I think he said that himself that he wants to be or is the next Jalen Carter.
Lofty goal, man.
That is some huge shoes to fill right there. I don't know that'd be awesome. That would be amazing if he even comes close to that.
And then at the edge position, Georgia was hit hard by the transfer of Damon Wilson. You really scratch your head. Why did Damon Wilson transfer? Because this is a 5-star guy who was going to be like the focus at the edge position that has done wonders, for players coming out of Georgia the last few years, and he transferred. Very, very weird situation. So to counter that, Georgia went out into the portal after spring and got Elo Medozi from Army. Now, this is a guy they say is physically a freak, but he is coming from Army. 6.5 sacks last year. So if that body develops and can fit in the SEC, great. You've got Gabe Harris there as well at edge. In the Georgia offense, having big sack numbers is never a thing that you see out of anybody, right? But 6.5 sacks, 7 sacks, 8 sacks, that's a good number. That's going to be your leader on the team. And so it seems like Medozi kind of fits into that mold. And hopefully, he works there well, pairing him up with Gabe Harris, and everything's good going forward.
Yeah, that's probably one of the more interesting places to look on defense this year. It's a big time transfer when it happened, and there's some high, I'd say high expectations of him. There's some people that are saying that he's going to be the big breakout defensive player of the year in the SEC, which I would love for that to happen.
That would be fantastic. If you can get a transfer from the United States Military Academy to come in and be SEC Player of the Year, man, what a bonus.
Yeah, seriously.
But like I said, the line itself is kind of a question mark, but the area that's not is the middle linebackers, right? The linebacking crew, the top 4 guys in the middle of Georgia's defense are sick. We've already talked about CJ Allen, the leader of that group. Then you got Raylan Wilson, Justin Williams, 2 4 or 5-star guys who have shown out. Justin Williams really showed out at G-Day. But the guy that I'm most excited about, the physical freak in that group, is Chris Cole. This is a guy who screams, to me, he screams Channing Tindall. Like his last year, where Nakobe kind of directed things and Channing Tindall just went and killed people. And that's what I see for Chris Cole.
That's an awesome comparison, because if that works out, I'll be just so happy, because we haven't, as good as the linebackers have been at Georgia, let's say past 2 years, we haven't had that same type of gelling that happened when we had Nakobe and Channing Tindall and the other guys.
And Quay Walker. Those 3 guys played so well together, and they complemented each other, how their play was so well.
Yeah.
And I think
these guys have played together for a while now.
Right.
Both CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson came in together, and they both played their freshman year.
They've both played a lot. And Justin Williams and Chris Cole came in last year. So you look at that linebacking room and you just think, man, there's so much talent there. You think back to that 21 team. I'm not saying that CJ Allen is going to be Nakobe Dean, but man, if he can just lead that room and they can make plays like they did and complement each other, not let people get outside them, the Georgia defense could be really, really, really good.
Oh, yeah. This could be one of those types of defenses that you look back on and you're like, wow, that was awesome.
Yeah. And then, of course, backing all of them up is the secondary. Dalen Everett is the senior back there, the guy who has come along in the tradition of Georgia quarterbacks. At first, he's kind of the guy that's not as good, while you've got the older veteran on the other side who kind of locks it down, gets beat up a lot as they are younger. Last year, he really started to come into his own, had two fantastic games against Texas. So he's got one side locked down. Battle going on at the other side. Daniel Harris played fantastic in G Day, but you've also got uber talented Ellis Robinson, former number one recruit in the country over there. And everybody says that
That's
his progress has been great too. So that's competing
that's
at that other corner spot.
that's the one guy that I'm most interested in seeing this year. We've talked about it before, where we weren't really hearing a lot about him. We didn't hear a lot about him last year. We weren't even really hearing about him a lot during the spring. So now that we're starting to hear about him, that's really exciting, especially when you look at the depth that is going to be there if he lives up to potential. Daniel Harris is not bad.
No, Daniel Harris was the opposite. He was the guy opposite Everett last year who got picked
Yeah,
on a lot, right?
yeah, and,
And
I mean, he stepped up and took the job from Julian Humphreys.
right. And the Georgia secondary was not as good as it has been in the past. Last year, Malachi Starks, as great as he was, had probably his worst year last year at Georgia. KJ Bolden, who I was going to talk about next, was awesome. True freshman, stepping in, starting all year last year. He's awesome. He's already an all conference player. He's going to be a stud back there. Uh,
It
in safety.
looks like he put on a lot of muscle in the off season. He's like way bigger than he was last year.
Yeah. And that's probably because, coming out of high school, they weren't sure if he was going to play some receiver or if he was just going to play safety. They probably kept his weight a little bit lower. But now that he's deadlocked in there at safety, they beefed him up. The other safety spots, including the star position, are kind of where there's some questions. Janelle Aguero looks to be the starter at star. He struggled a lot with injuries last year, and he struggled a lot with injuries his first 2 years, but he has all the potential. So hopefully he kind of locks that position down. And then the other safety spot is interesting. So you've got transfer Adrian Maddox coming in from UAB, who is getting rave reviews. But so is Ja'Cory Thomas. Ja'Cory Thomas has gotten really, really good press too. So yeah, so those are your guys at safety competing for the job. So what do you think about the defensive backfield, bro?
I'm excited for it. Well, as I mentioned, Ellis Robinson, that could be huge. Having three really solid corners, locking things down on the perimeter. No worries about Dalen Everett. He's my favorite out of the secondary. I am so happy for this guy, because Georgia fans, I love you, but you gotta stop hating on these players the way you do, because Dalen Everett caught a lot of heat his first couple seasons,
He
and
absolutely
it,
did.
it's not that it wasn't like deserved, but it wasn't that bad. He was playing the opposite of Kamari Lassiter. No one was throwing at Kamari Lassiter.
Kamar Lassiter, right? And just like you remember back,
Yeah,
other
and the year
years,
before
like,
that.
it's always the guy that was opposite our lockdown guy always got thrown out a ton, and then the next year he got good, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, did we
it's
have the
kind
same
of
situation with DeAndre Baker and Tyson Campbell, right? Like,
yeah, yeah. It just seems like a tried and true tradition. Maybe actually, all right, Georgia fans. Maybe that's the secret sauce to this whole thing. You get your number two cornerback, number one cornerback's not getting thrown at, so he's getting picked on, crap all over him, and he becomes awesome first round draft pick.
right. It's happened a lot.
Yeah. But besides the corners, I feel really. I mean, there's still some questions at safety. Obviously, KJ Bolden is a lock there. It's going to be a big season for Janelle Aguero. He's got to step up and prove his potential.
Yeah. The stars are an important position in the Georgia defense.
It
Um,
is. It's basically hybrid safety linebacker.
right. And you loved watching Javon Bullard play that position, a lot, man. It would come up on those blitzes, and we've had good guys there. And Aguero's got, he's got talent. It's just staying healthy.
Yeah, that it if he could come close to a Javon Bullard, although I don't know that I see that because the way Javon Bullard played with Aguero's injury history doesn't seem like it's going to be that, but you never know.
Yeah. So I think the big thing for Georgia on defense this year is get more consistent. Last year we just saw lapses, giving up long touchdowns that were just uncharacteristic. Like you think about the Mississippi State game where there were just long passes that just or missed tackles, just things that didn't seem very characteristic of a Kirby Smart defense. So
Yeah, and guys just out of position in weird situations, like we saw that with Malachi Starks and CJ Allen a lot, and it was just really uncharacteristic.
so young defense, uber talented. Hopefully they get back to, what they were, with those four guys leading the way. I certainly think Georgia can. They don't have, the schedule gets a little bit better because you don't have a Clemson team on the schedule. You get those tough games that were on the road last year at home, and we're going to talk about the schedule in a minute. So I think this is once again, another year where Kirby proves that his recruiting prowess on the defensive side of the football pays off.
Yeah, as long as Kirby's at Georgia, I'm gonna feel pretty good about the defense. Even last year's defense wasn't what we're used to seeing at Georgia. Still pretty damn good.
So that's the offense and the defense. Now, want to touch a little bit on special teams because I don't know if I've ever seen a year where all of the special teams players on the first team All SEC team came from one team, but that happened this year. So Brett Thorson was the first team punter. Peyton Woodring was the first team kicker. Zachariah Branch was the first team returner. And heck, even the long snapper, Bo Gardner, was first team All SEC. So, if anything, as Kevin Butler would say, specialty teams should be really good this year. And I think the cool part is having Branch back there as a weapon. I really felt like we kind of lacked that last year. There was nobody that you felt dangerous when on returns. But given Zachariah Branch's history, especially from his freshman year at USC, that should be fun to watch.
Yeah, we haven't had a real return threat since Lad McConkey, and even when Lad was here, it was he was used sparingly. So we really haven't committed to punt returns. It's been more of a all right, just field the ball and let's go.
Yeah. And I'm excited for Thorson to be back. That was so sad when he got hurt uh,
He
in
made the
the
best
SEC
tackle.
championship game. Yeah. But it was sad. But you know what? If Thorson doesn't get hurt, does Georgia win the SEC championship game? And it's a real question because don't forget that they ran a fake punt where Drew Bobo completed a pass to Arian Smith on a first down. That if Thorson's in there, they probably just punt the ball.
Maybe that's a good hypothetical.
So yeah, so that's kind of it. For the team itself. Burl, you got any more questions before we kind of dig into the schedule and what we think is going to happen this year?
I'm just really wondering how the running game's gonna pan out. I'm excited to see a lot of the guys coming back. Roderick Robinson.
Roger. Yeah.
That's a guy that if he's healthy, he could be like a Brandon Jacobs type running back.
Yeah.
And
He's stout. He's a brick house, right?
yeah. So can Georgia run the ball consistently? Can the offensive line, that young offensive line, actually move people at the line of scrimmage? That is probably the biggest question that I have.
I think my biggest question for this team, we've won national championships. We've won SEC championships. The one thing that we've continued to struggle with, can Georgia finally beat Alabama at home? I know we beat them in the national championship a couple years ago, but went on the road and lost him again. And how many times are we going to have to keep hearing, oh, Kirby Smart's record 1-6 against Alabama, blah, 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 blah. I think I'm tired of it. So I always care about what happens the rest of the season. But to me, the season relies on September 27th in Athens. Georgia has to win that game.
It's a huge game, and it falls in a really crappy spot. Really crappy. Because we got to play at Tennessee the week before. And that's going to be Gunnar's first true road test in the SEC. And that's a hell of a place for your first true road test at Tennessee.
Yeah, so let's dig into the schedule a little bit.
All right.
So obviously, week 1, yes, we're playing Marshall at home. Okay. For all those people who hating on Georgia, oh, why are you scheduling Marshall? This game was supposed to be played at the Rose Bowl, and it was supposed to be against UCLA. When UCLA joined the Big Ten, they asked us to cancel it. Now we obliged, but whatever. Marshall was the best we could do on short notice, and it was canceled late. So a couple years ago, Marshall was really, really good. I don't think they're anything special right now.
How funny would that have been if we still had that game with Nico there?
Yeah, with Nico there. But yeah, Georgia gets a win there. Austin Peay second week. Yeah, Georgia gets a win. But these games are important for Gunnar to continue to build rapport. And then, like you said, then we go on the road up to Tennessee, September 13th, taking on Tennessee. It's a 3:30 kick, so it's not a night game, which I think that helps.
That helps. It helps. But the end of the game is going to be at night.
Yeah. Playing Tennessee at Neyland Stadium is always difficult, though Georgia, the last couple of times we've been up there, have really put it to them. So we'll see. Tennessee's got to play Syracuse week 1. If they win that game, they're going to be feeling good about Aguilar there at quarterback, so they'll come into that game maybe with some confidence.
Yeah, I mean, we could see a much improved Tennessee team with better quarterback play. That's a big question for them. But let's assume that that's the case. If there was a year that Tennessee had a great chance to knock off the Dogs, it'd be this year, just because of where they fall on the schedule.
Yeah, it's back to Tennessee being early in the season, right? For the longest time, Tennessee was a September or early October game. A few years ago, they switched Auburn and them on the schedule, right? So we're getting back to Tennessee early in the season. It's going to be a tricky one, right? Tennessee's defense is really, really good. No matter what their offense is, their defense is going to be good. That's going to be a challenge for Georgia to go up there in Gunnar's first game and score points.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, so looking on the brighter side, look, some silver lining here. With them playing Alabama that next week.
Well, you got a bye week the next week before Alabama.
Well, that's good. But still, you got to play at Tennessee and then you play Alabama. Since those are two, not easy games. I don't care what people say about Tennessee. That's not going to be an easy game. But it does force you as a team to not look ahead. Because you can't. Because if you're looking ahead to Bama, you're definitely going to lose to Tennessee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you come back from Knoxville. You've got a bye week before the Bama game. Bama also has a bye week. This is another one of those seasons where you have 2 bye weeks because the first week of the season falls before September 1st. So it works out nicely this year that Georgia gets 2 bye weeks. They get that bye week before Bama. If they lose, it's a chance to come back and look at what the problems were and restack it before Bama. If you win, it's time to come home and get healthy and, get ready for the Crimson Tide coming in. Like I said, September 27th to me is the most important game of the season. For me, I want to beat Alabama at home. Georgia needs to step up and say, hey, this is not the Saban era. And yes, DeBoer won last year, but that was still really Saban's team. This is
And
DeBoer's team.
Saban was there.
Right. This is DeBoer's team. If you want to say that, you know, we're Alabama is going to move behind Georgia in the pecking order in the SEC and maybe behind Texas, you got to be able to beat them. You can't be the man until you beat the man. And
Well,
unfortunately, Georgia has not beaten the man enough to be able to say that.
absolutely. Absolutely. This, I agree. This is the biggest game on the schedule, hands down. Alabama is the boogeyman for Georgia. Alabama has become what Florida was in the 90s. Just that team that, for whatever reason, we just can't beat.
Yep. We find ways to lose.
Yeah, yeah. I swear the only reason that we beat Alabama in the national championship because it wasn't played at Mercedes-Benz. So the fact that we're not playing them at Mercedes-Benz, that helps.
This is the first time we play Alabama at home since 2015. We remember the rain game. That was the day that I think everybody realized that the Mark Richt era was dead.
Even
That we just were never going to catch up, you know. But so it's 2015 was was the rain game, and they just absolutely obliterated us with Jake Coker at quarterback. While we trotted out there, old Grayson Lambert.
I forgot about that.
But after Alabama, Georgia gets Kentucky, but it's at home, and Kentucky is probably the worst or the second worst team in the SEC. And if it was at Kentucky, we'd be a little concerned because,
We don't play
as
well
we
at
talked about
Kentucky.
before, we just play bad up there. But that'll be a good game, I think, to get a win, because the next week you've got another tough road challenge going to Auburn.
Yeah, and I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this game because the news dropped today that on that day, Auburn will be retiring one Cameron Newton's jersey or number.
Yeah, his jersey number.
And I saw that there was another time when another school retired a famous player's jersey when they played Georgia. And that was Tennessee with Peyton Manning. And then Georgia went on to destroy him. So hopefully history repeats itself in this situation. That would be great.
Yeah. So I think Auburn has a bye week actually the week before that. So they are definitely going to be geared up for Georgia coming in.
Yeah.
It just depends on where they are as a team and how Jackson Arnold is gelling with those receivers. Just like playing at Neyland, playing at Jordan Hare is difficult. I don't care what their record is. It's a tough place to play. It's constructed to be loud, and they have a good environment. So that'll be a
Yeah.
challenge for Georgia to pick
I
up a
think
win there.
I think it's the toughest place for Georgia to win. Well, currently. It used to be the opposite.
Yeah.
If you remember,
I mean,
like the away team in the series would always win.
yeah.
You remember those days?
Yeah. We haven't lost there since 2017. So we've won the last few. But that is kind of the place of horrors, right? That was the place of the Cam Newton game in 2010 when Georgia got up early, even though Georgia was trash, and Cam Newton came back down the field and scored 1 billion points. That was also the place of the 2013 prayer at Jordan Hare. Yeah. I don't want to talk about that one. So yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
tough place for Georgia.
Yeah. Like Nick Saban said, there's ghosts on that field.
Yeah. Georgia comes home the next week to host Ole Miss. Obviously, they didn't play well last year at Ole Miss. This year, Ole Miss, I don't think is going to have the defense that they had last year. Last time Ole Miss came to Athens, they were feeling good about themselves, and Georgia put up 50 on them. I think Kirby is buddies with Lane Kiffin, and if Georgia's playing well and Ole Miss is kind of decent, but coming through the year with some growing pains, not as good on defense, this could be one where Georgia puts up some points and tries to really hammer things home before the end of the season stretch.
Yeah, that home field advantage against Ole Miss is huge, and you can expect the Ole Miss to have a high-powered offense as long as Lane Kiffin's there, kind of like with Kirby at Georgia. As long as Kirby's at Georgia, the defense is going to be good. As long as Lane Kiffin's at Ole Miss, the offense is going to be good. So the big question in that game is how good is Ole Miss's defense going to be?
Right. Right. Because I think Austin Simmons is going to be a good quarterback.
But yeah, I do too.
Then Georgia gets the week off, go down to Florida to play in the cocktail party for the last time in Jacksonville for a few years. And we've talked about it ad nauseum, but Florida's season depends on the health of DJ Lagway. Like, he is the guy that's going to make that team go. They have talent. They have, great O-line. They've got good receivers. They've got a decent defense, but their schedule's so tough that if Lagway's there and he's healthy and he's everything he's been built up to be, that's going to be a hell of a game.
Yeah, that could be a huge game, depending on Lagway's health. And just to kind of hammer the point home about him being, the engine that runs that offense, just look at the Georgia-Florida game last year. As soon as he goes out, Florida was done.
Right. They were definitely in control there. Next week, Georgia goes to Mississippi State. Mississippi State's not going to be good. Georgia's going to go win that game. I don't have much else to say about that.
They'll find a way to make it interesting, though.
Yeah.
There's always that one away game against a crappy team.
Yeah.
Remember, what was that 1 year against Missouri when Missouri was really bad? And then last year's Kentucky team.
Yeah. So then Georgia comes home November 15th. Texas comes to town. And I think this game, more than anything, looking at this game, I think the Alabama game is more important. That's just me. I think this game might decide which team plays in the SEC championship. I think Georgia and Texas probably come into this game 1-2 losses, competing for a spot in the SEC title. And this might be a de facto SEC championship semifinal game late in the season.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening, because I've been trying to think through a little bit, like, okay, if Georgia did lose 2 games, could they wind up in the SEC championship? And obviously, yes, that is a possibility, but it becomes a lot harder, because if you lose to Bama, or let's say we lose to Bama and Texas, well, you're going to be hard to get in. Yeah, it's going to be really, really hard to get in.
You can't lose to both the teams you're competing with, right? Because then you need them to both lose twice. And if you've already got 2, then you need them to lose 3 times. And that's not going to happen. So it's the last SEC game of the year for Georgia.
But if we do lose to Texas, could that be a blessing in disguise?
Absolutely. And I was going to talk about that when we talk about the playoff thing, because obviously look at Ohio State, right?
Yeah. I mean, not having to play in the SEC championship game. Think about it if Georgia didn't have to play in the SEC championship last year.
Yeah. Carson doesn't get hurt.
Thorson doesn't get hurt, more importantly.
Yeah. So, you close out the season. You've got Charlotte at home. That'll be fun. Senior day. Rah, rah. Everybody happy. And then we get to play Tech. It was Tech's year to host, so they want more money. So it's at Mercedes-Benz. It's Black Friday, but it's not Black Friday at night, and it's inside. Last year was insane. It was so cold. Tech was motivated. Georgia already knew they had their spot in the SEC championship. They were looking ahead. I don't see it happening again. I don't see Tech getting the best of Georgia in that way. Not to say that Brent Key's not a good coach and that he's built the program back and that Haynes King is not awesome, because he is. And not to say that this is going to be a blowout or something like that. But if Georgia is in the same position they were last year, either going to the SEC championship game or pretty secure and they're going to probably make the playoff, I don't see Tech preventing that from happening.
Yeah, and regardless of where Georgia's at the end of the year, Kirby's going to have those boys ready for this game.
Yeah. Like I said, being inside, I think that plays totally into Georgia as well.
The only thing that really concerns me about that is that it's played at Mercedes-Benz, and that's not been a good place for Georgia
Sometimes it
traditionally.
has been.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we
I
we
mean,
destroyed
sometimes.
Oregon and Clemson and LSU there.
Yeah, I guess you're right. As long if we're playing ACC teams, it's a good
So
thing.
as long as this team on the other side of the field ain't Alabama.
I know. I just didn't want to say it.
So yeah, so that's the schedule. So, that kind of wraps up just the Georgia portion of this preview, but we wanted to talk a little bit about our previews for the college football playoff and the conference winners and all that stuff. So, Burl, I'm going to start out. I'll give you my conference winners, then let me hear yours, and then we'll talk about the playoff. So, conference champs, I've got SEC, I've got Texas winning the SEC. In the Big Ten, I've got Penn State. Out in the Big 12, I've got Kansas State, and then the ACC, I've got Clemson. So, I've got three of the four favorites, but I think this is a year where that kind of holds up. Who do you got winning the big conferences?
It's hard to go against Texas this year. I'll join you on that one. I want to say Penn State is going to win the Big Ten so bad, but I just have this sneaking suspicion that it's going to be Michigan. And then for the Big 12, oh man, I'm like torn between Texas Tech and ASU. So I'm, but I'm leaning towards Arizona State. So I'm going to go with Arizona State for the Big 12 and Clemson in the ACC because who else is there besides, I mean, really besides Tech? I mean, Miami might challenge, but they got a lot to prove. I mean,
So outside of the conference champs, in terms of your playoff teams, this is what I was thinking. I've got Alabama. I honestly think Alabama goes 11-1 in the regular season. I think their loss is to Georgia, and that's it. I think they play in the SEC championship against Texas. Texas, like I mentioned before, that Texas Georgia game is de facto play in. I think Texas, right now, looking at it on paper, I think Texas comes into Athens and wins. That's just gut feel. But I think Georgia still makes the playoff at 10-2. Oregon, because their schedule is set up so nicely this year, I don't see how they don't at least finish 10-2. So I got Oregon back in. Notre Dame, once again, I think Notre Dame can go 10-2 and make it. They've got 2 SEC games, but their schedule, it's nothing special. So I think Notre Dame makes it. I think Ohio State, once again, finds a way back in as well. They don't have to play Oregon this year. I think they'll be solid enough. They'll be back in the game. Group of 5, I've got Tulane making it. There's a couple competitors. Your Boise State, your Tulane, your UNLV. I just picked one out of hat. Tulane has a game early in the year against Ole Miss, and I think if they can win that game, that would be a signature win that potentially, when compared against everybody else, could vault them over everybody. So that's why I picked Tulane. And then the last 2 picks, I got Arizona State. I think the Big 12 this year gets a second team in, where it was ACC last year. And then for that last spot, does the SEC or the Big 10 get that 4th team in? And I think it comes down to a week 2 game, Michigan and Oklahoma. I think the winner of that game might have a chance to go on. Oklahoma, because their schedule is so tough, that if they can get to 9-3 and they have a win over Michigan, I think they get in the playoff.
it's hard to argue. But yeah, for me, definitely with Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Notre Dame. I mean, they have like 1 or 2 games that they have to win, and the rest are cake.
It's their first 2
Tulane,
games. It's Miami
yeah,
and Texas A&M, really.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I kind of feel like the Big 12 is going to get 2 teams, but if they don't, then I could see Miami sneaking in there. And ACC having 2 teams like they did last year. But like I said before, they got a lot of question marks. So I think for my group of 5, I'll go with UNLV, the fighting Dans,
Fighting Dan Mullins.
and then to round it out, I would have Penn State in the playoffs because I had them not winning the
Yeah, you had Michigan winning the conference title. Do you have Ohio State in?
yeah.
Did you mention? Okay. I just didn't hear you saying. So, all said and done, we don't know how the bracket will shake out and everything, but this year is not one of those years where you looked at it and you said, definitely this team's going to win. I think most of us felt like running into last year that it was either going to be Ohio State or Georgia coming into the year last year. What's your gut feel? Who's going to win the national championship this year?
Let's see. I think it could very well come down to Georgia and Penn State.
Okay. Who wins?
If that happens, Georgia wins.
I think I'm going to shake it up a little bit. I think I look at the team who has the best shot to kind of go through the season and win games and win strong. And they have a week one game that's tough. And if they get the momentum early, they can carry that through. And so I think one team in the national championship game is going to be Clemson. They've got a senior quarterback. They've got a great defense, much like Georgia in that 2021 season. They can ride that first game of the season with them hosting LSU. They can ride that the whole season. So I've got Clemson in the national championship game, and I've got them taking on Texas. I just looked at Texas, and man, the running back room, the linebacking core, they don't need Arch to be insanely good. They really don't. But if he is, then they may be an unstoppable team. So I got Texas Clemson in a national championship game, and I think Texas wins.
Breaking my heart, man.
I know.
But yeah, I could see that happen as well. I do feel pretty good about Clemson. There's a lot of there's some because you look at these preseason polls that have come out, they're all over the place this year. But the one consistent one that's in the mix is always Clemson.
Yeah. Yep. So that wraps up our Georgia preview and our college football playoff preview. We do have week 0 games this week. So college football does start this week. And we do have one game of note. And that's my Big 12 champion, Kansas State, taking on Iowa State, who is amongst the other favorites out
Go
there.
Clones.
They're playing over in Ireland. So we do have a game to look forward to this weekend. I'm going to go with Kansas State because I think, like I said, I picked them to be the champion this year. I think Avery Johnson's going to develop and be a star out of that league this year. But Matt Campbell's a good coach, and you know, they won 10 games for the first time in school history last year. So something to look forward to and watch this weekend.
Yep. Give me Iowa State. Rocco Becht. Go Clones. Clone Wars. Let's do this. Farmageddon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that'll wrap it up for this week. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe. Leave us a comment. Leave us a like. Tell us what you think. How's Georgia going to do this year? How's the national championship going to shake out? Let us know. And next week, we'll be back with our week 1 preview. Starting in the season, we're going to be going live and doing these live on Sunday nights. So shows will be out on Sunday nights. Bro, you got anything else?
Yeah, just be prepared for us to mess up as much as possible because we're as Brooks Austin likes to say, we're just a couple slappies on the internet. But it's going to be fun, and it's going to be a fun season. We're looking forward to it, and I can't wait.
Yep. All right. Well, until next week, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.